The room was loud in the way family dinners usually are. Plates clinked. Someone was talking about work. Someone else laughed at a joke that wasn't very funny. The air smelled like warm food and familiar habits. Nothing about the moment felt important, until it suddenly was. I was halfway through lifting my fork when my mother laughed. Not a soft laugh. Not an awkward one. It was sharp. Intentional. Loud enough to cut through every other sound at the table. She leaned back in her chair, looked straight at me, and said, "So tell me, how does it feel to be useless, daughter?" Her words landed cleanly. No hesitation. No hint of a joke afterward to soften it. Just silence, waiting to see what I would do. For a split second, my body reacted the way it always used to. My shoulders tightened. My stomach dropped. That familiar instinct to shrink, to apologize, to explain myself, to make it lighter, flickered through me like muscle memory. Then it passed. I don't know exactly when that instinct stopped having power over me. I just know that in that moment, it didn't win. I set my fork down slowly. Not to make a statement. Just because I was done eating. I looked at her calmly and said, "It feels great. Since I just stopped paying your rent." The table went still. Not dramatic stillness. Not gasps or raised voices. Just the quiet kind, the kind where everyone freezes because their brain needs a second to catch up with what they just heard. My father's fork slipped from his hand and tapped against his plate. Someone across the table cleared their throat and then stopped halfway through. Even the background noise of the restaurant seemed to fade, like the room itself was holding its breath. My mother's smile didn't fall right away. It froze first. Stretched thin. Then slowly disappeared, as if she was trying to decide whether she'd misheard me. "What?" my father asked. One word. Sharp. Confused. My mother glanced at him, then back at me, already searching for a way to reframe the moment. That was her skill. She didn't react, she rewrote. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said with a forced laugh that didn't quite land. "She's joking. You know how sensitive she gets." I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on my father. "I'm not joking," I said evenly. "I stopped last month." The quiet deepened. My father stared at me like I'd just said something illegal. "Rent?" he asked again. "What rent?" For the first time that night, my mother didn't interrupt fast enough. "For 3 years," I said, still calm, still steady. "I've been paying her rent every month. Utilities too." Her head snapped toward me. "That is not how." "I'm not finished," I said. Not louder. Just firmer. I could feel everyone watching now. Not judging. Processing. "I paid it after my divorce," I continued. "Out of my salary. Out of my settlement. Quietly. Because she asked me to keep it between us." My father's face changed in stages: confusion, disbelief, then something colder. "Is that true?" he asked her. She straightened in her chair. "I needed a little help," she said quickly. "My hours were cut. I didn't want to burden you." "A little help?" I repeated. I covered everything. The table shifted. Someone took a sip of water that they didn't seem to need. My father looked between us, then back at her. "Why didn't you tell me?" She hesitated. "Just long enough." "She didn't want you to know," I said. "She said it would make her look irresponsible." That was when I realized something important. This wasn't an argument. It was an unveiling. I wasn't reacting. I wasn't defending myself. I was simply stating facts, out loud, for the first time, in front of people who could no longer pretend this was just a personality issue or a misunderstanding. My mother opened her mouth again, already reaching for control. She didn't know yet that this moment wasn't impulsive. She didn't know that this conversation had been planned for months. And she definitely didn't know that what happened next would force everyone at that table to finally see who had really been funding her life. No one spoke right away. It wasn't awkward silence. It was the kind that settles in when something inconvenient has just become undeniable. My father leaned back slightly, his hands resting flat on the table, as if he needed something solid under them. 3 years, he said slowly, testing the words. "You mean, consistently?" "Yes," I replied. "Every month." My mother crossed her arms. "You're making it sound worse than it was." I let that sit for a moment. "It was rent," I said. "That's not a misunderstanding." That's a commitment. The thing about secrets like this is that they don't feel dramatic while you're living them. They feel practical. Necessary. Like something you take on temporarily, assuming it will end soon. It started right after my divorce. I just moved into a small apartment with boxes still half packed when she called me late one night. She sounded shaken. Said the rent had gone up. Said she didn't know what she was going to do. Said she was embarrassed to ask your father because he already thought she handled money badly. I just need help for a little while, she'd said. You understand, right? I did understand. That was the problem. So I transferred the money. Just 1 month, I told myself. Then 2. Then 3. Each time, she said thank you in a way that felt heavy, like I'd signed something without reading the fine print. At the table now, my father frowned. Why didn't you come to me? He asked her. She waved a hand dismissively. Because I didn't want to cause a fight. You know how you get about finances. That's not an answer, he said. I looked down at my hands. She asked me not to tell you. His head snapped toward me. She did. Yes. My mother sighed loudly, like the victim of an unnecessary interrogation. I didn't want him worrying, she said. And Maya offered. I didn't offer, I corrected. You cried. That got a few quiet reactions around the table. Not gasps. Just small shifts. Someone adjusting their chair. Someone else looking down at their plate. She said if I didn't help, she might lose the apartment, I continued. And that if you found out, you'd think she was irresponsible. So I kept it quiet. My father rubbed his jaw. I had no idea. I know, I said. That's why it worked. My mother leaned forward. So now you're painting me as some kind of villain? No, I said calmly. I'm explaining the arrangement. There was a difference. And I could tell people were starting to hear it. I didn't just send rent, I added. I paid utilities. Internet. I covered an emergency credit card bill once. Her eyes flicked to mine. Warning. I didn't stop. I never told anyone, I said. Because you made it clear this only worked if it stayed private. My father exhaled slowly. So all those times you said you were fine. She cut him off. I was fine. You weren't, I said. You were being funded. The word hung there longer than I expected. Funded. It sounded neutral. Accurate. Impossible to argue with. My mother scoffed. Families help each other. Yes, I agreed. But families don't humiliate the person paying their bills. That was when the room shifted. Because suddenly, the insult from earlier didn't sound isolated anymore. It sounded rehearsed. Like something that only works when the person you're belittling can't afford to stop showing up. I looked around the table. At the faces that had watched me quietly absorb her comments for years. I wasn't helping her, I said softly. I was protecting her image. And that was the truth no one had been willing to say out loud until now. What none of them knew yet, what my mother especially didn't know, was that this wasn't the full story. And I wasn't the first person she'd done this to. When you live inside something long enough, it stops looking like a pattern and starts feeling like your personality. That's what happened to me. I didn't think of myself as someone being used. I thought of myself as the responsible one. The dependable one. The daughter who didn't make problems worse. At the table, my father was quiet now, listening instead of reacting. My mother watched him closely, measuring how much ground she was losing. I took a breath and let my eyes drift away from her, back into the memories I'd avoided for years. After the first few months, the payments stopped feeling temporary. Any time I hinted that I was struggling, she reminded me of everything she'd done for me growing up. How hard she'd worked. How much she'd sacrificed. How ungrateful it would look if I pulled back now, when she needed me most. You're the only one I can rely on, she'd say. It sounded like love. It felt like pressure. If I mentioned telling my dad, her tone changed. Not angry, wounded. So now I'm a burden? So you want him thinking I can't manage my own life? I guess I shouldn't have trusted you. That was the trick. She never demanded. She implied. She let guilt do the work. At the table, my father finally spoke again. Why didn't you ever say no? He asked me quietly. I met his eyes. Because every time I tried, she made it about who I was as a person. My mother scoffed. That's not fair. It's accurate, I said. I explained how the conversation always went. How money was never just money. It was proof. Loyalty. Evidence that I wasn't selfish, cold, or failing at life. If I pushed back, I said, she didn't argue about numbers. She questioned my character. That was when I realized this wasn't about rent. It was about control. As long as I was paying, I stayed small. I stayed careful. I stayed invested in keeping her happy, because walking away would mean accepting that I'd been manipulated, and that was harder than sending another transfer. I looked at my mother. You didn't just need help, I said. You needed leverage. Her jaw tightened. That's ridiculous. Is it? I asked. Because you never stopped calling me useless. You just made sure I stayed useful. The words landed harder than anything I'd said so far. I hadn't planned to say that sentence. It surprised me with how true it felt. Around the table, no one interrupted. My father leaned forward slightly. Is this why you were always stressed? He asked. Why you turned down trips? Why you said you couldn't afford things? I nodded. Yes. My mother jumped in quickly. She's always been bad with money. I didn't react. Every time I struggled, I said instead, she told me it was because I didn't manage well. That I wasn't cut out for adult life. I paused. And I believed her. That was the hardest part to admit. Not that she'd used me, but that I'd helped her do it by believing the version of myself she needed me to be. The shift didn't happen all at once. There wasn't a dramatic breaking point. Just one quiet night when I opened my bank app and realized I was anxious every single time I saw her name. That was when I stopped asking myself how to keep surviving this arrangement. And started asking myself how to leave it. I didn't confront her then. I didn't warn her. I planned. Which is why, sitting at that table now, with everyone watching her scramble to regain control, I knew something she didn't. This wasn't emotional. It was deliberate. And I had brought more than words with me that night. I reached into my bag slowly. Not in a dramatic way. Not to make anyone nervous. Just enough movement to shift the attention back to me. My mother's eyes followed my hand immediately. What are you doing? She asked, her voice tight. I pulled out a thick envelope and placed it on the table between us. That, I said, is everything. My father looked down at it, then back at me. Everything. Yes. The envelope wasn't neat. It wasn't symbolic. It was practical. Bank statements. Screenshots. Dates. Amounts. Messages saved because I'd learned the hard way that memory isn't enough when someone is good at rewriting history. My mother laughed again, but this time it sounded brittle. You brought paperwork to dinner? I brought clarity, I replied. She reached for the envelope instinctively, as if she could close it by touching it. My father's hand moved faster. He slid it toward himself before she could react. Mark, she said sharply. Don't. He ignored her and opened it. The first few pages were simple. Highlighted transfers. Same amount. Same date. Month after month. He flipped slowly. Too slowly for my mother's comfort. You told me your job covered the rent, he said quietly. She waved a hand. It did. Mostly. You told me your sister helped with the card bill, he continued. Her smile tightened. She did help. She didn't, I said. I did. The papers rustled as he turned another page. Screenshots of messages. Her name at the top. Familiar phrases underneath. Just one more month. I'll fix it soon. Please don't tell anyone. I'd be so embarrassed. The table stayed silent. Not because anyone was being polite. Because no one knew how to interrupt evidence. My mother leaned back, crossing her arms. This is unnecessary, she said. We can talk about this later. At home. That's why I didn't want to, I said. Because later becomes never. And private becomes rewritten. A couple of people at nearby tables glanced over, then quickly looked away. I noticed. My mother definitely did. You're doing this on purpose, she hissed. Yes, I said. I am. My father paused on one page. You said she offered, he said, looking up at her. But this message says you called her crying. Her mouth opened, then closed. I was stressed, she said finally. I might have exaggerated. You told me you'd be homeless, I said. You said it would be my fault if that happened. That's not what I meant. It's what you said. The difference mattered. My father exhaled through his nose, the sound controlled but strained. Why keep this from me? He asked her. Why let our daughter carry this alone? She looked at him like he'd betrayed her. Because you judge me. I'm judging you now, he said quietly. That was when something shifted in her expression. Not anger. Not embarrassment. Fear. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about witnesses. About a version of herself she could no longer manage. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I just let the facts sit there between us. For a long time, I said, I thought if I stayed calm, if I kept helping, things would even out. That you'd stop. I tapped the envelope lightly. They didn't. My mother stared at the papers like they might disappear if she ignored them long enough. You didn't have to do this, she said. Yes, I replied. I did. Because in that moment, I understood something clearly. I wasn't trying to embarrass her. I was documenting reality. And once reality was on the table, she couldn't control the story anymore. What she didn't realize yet, what none of them fully realized, was that this proof wasn't just about me. It was about a pattern. And someone else at that table was about to recognize it. The room stayed quiet longer than I expected. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because no one wanted to be the first to say it. My mother sat rigid in her chair, lips pressed tight, eyes moving quickly from face to face, as if she could still recalibrate the room if she chose the right angle. That was always her strength. If she couldn't deny something outright, she reframed it. If she couldn't reframe it, she minimized it. And if that failed, she waited for someone else to rescue her from discomfort. That rescue never came. Instead, a chair shifted slightly to my left. My aunt, my mother's younger sister, cleared her throat. I didn't plan to say anything, she began, her voice calm but steady. But I recognized this conversation. My mother turned toward her instantly. This has nothing to do with you. It does, my aunt replied. Not louder. Just firmer. Because I've been on the other side of it. The air changed. Not sharply. Subtly. Like a window opening in a room that had been sealed for years. I didn't know about the rent, my aunt continued, looking at me briefly, then back at the table. But the way you talk to her? The way you make help sound like obligation and obligation sound like love. She paused. I've heard that voice before. My mother laughed, quick and defensive. Oh, please. Now you're diagnosing me. I'm describing a pattern, my aunt said. And I'm not doing it to attack you. I'm doing it because pretending it isn't there hasn't helped anyone. No one interrupted her. She went on, slowly, choosing each word with care. There were times when I was younger, when money was tight, when you were overwhelmed, when you asked me for help. And when I hesitated, you didn't argue with me. You questioned who I was. My mother's eyes narrowed. That's not fair. It's accurate, my aunt said. You didn't ask. You implied. And when I pulled back, you made it sound like I was abandoning you. A quiet breath moved around the table. Not surprise, recognition. I didn't speak. For once, I didn't need to. My mother looked at me, then back at her sister. So now you're all ganging up on me? No, my aunt replied. We're noticing the same behavior from different angles. That was the moment it happened. Not an explosion. Not a confrontation. A shift. Because suddenly, this wasn't my word against hers. It was a pattern against denial. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. She searched for something sympathy, outrage disguised as humor, but none of it landed the way it used to. My father spoke quietly. Is this true? He asked his sister-in-law. Did this happen with you too? She nodded. In different ways. Different moments. Same tone. My mother's shoulders stiffened. You're exaggerating. No one reacted. That was new. I realized then that the power she'd always relied on wasn't her words. It was our responses. The explanations. The defensiveness. The scrambling to keep things calm. And now, there was none of that. I didn't argue. I didn't correct. I didn't explain. I just listened. And the more calmly the truth sat there, the less control she had over it. She didn't lose control because I yelled. She lost it because I didn't. Because when no one rushed to soften the moment, her story had nothing left to hold it together. The table stayed quiet again, but this time, it felt different. Lighter. Like something heavy had finally been named and no longer needed to be carried by just one person. And for the first time that night, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel at all. Relief. Relief didn't mean resolution. It just meant the room could finally breathe. My mother sat back in her chair, arms crossed tightly now, like she was bracing against something cold. The confidence she usually carried had thinned into something brittle. She wasn't loud anymore. She wasn't laughing. She was watching, waiting to see who would fix this for her. No one did. My father was the first to speak. "So, what happens now?" he asked, not to her, but to me. The question caught me off guard. Not what did she do? Not why didn't you say something sooner? But what do you want to happen now? I had spent so long reacting that I'd rarely been asked to decide. I thought for a moment. I wanted to stop, I said. I want this pattern to stop. I don't want money to be the thing that keeps us talking. And I don't want silence to be the thing that keeps the peace. My mother let out a sharp breath. "So that's it? You cut me off and walk away." "I already cut it off," I replied. "I told the landlord I wouldn't be paying anymore." Her head snapped up. "You did what?" "I removed my name from anything it was never supposed to be on," I said calmly. "That part is already done." The panic showed this time. Quick. Unfiltered. "You wouldn't dare," she said. "I already did." For a moment, no one spoke. Then my father nodded slowly. "Good," he said. That was never her responsibility. My mother turned to him, stunned. "So you're just letting this happen?" "I'm letting consequences happen," he said. "There's a difference." She looked around the table, clearly waiting for anyone, to argue with him. No one did. I felt something inside me settle. Not satisfaction. Not triumph. Finality. "I'm not asking anyone to pick sides," I said. "I'm just done paying for things that hurt me." My mother shook her head, disbelief giving way to anger. "After everything I did for you." I met her eyes. "This isn't punishment. It's protection." That seemed to confuse her more than anything else I'd said. Because she understood revenge. She understood leverage. She understood guilt. But she didn't understand boundaries. "I'm not taking anything from you," I continued. "I'm just taking myself out of the arrangement." She stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. I pushed my chair back slightly, not standing yet, just creating space. "For years," I said, "I thought walking away would make me cruel. Or selfish. Or prove everything you said about me was true." I paused. But staying was costing me more than leaving ever could. My father folded the papers back into the envelope and placed it gently in front of him, as if closing a chapter. "This doesn't happen again," he said to her. Not with her. Not with anyone. My mother looked smaller now. Not defeated, cornered. And for the first time, I understood something clearly. I didn't need to win. I just needed to stop participating. Because the moment I stopped trying to manage her reactions, her control ended. And whatever happened next would no longer be paid for by me. 3 months later, my alarm went off at 7 a.m. And for the first time in years, my first thought wasn't about money. It wasn't did she text? It wasn't did something go wrong? It wasn't how am I going to fix this? It was something small. Coffee. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling of my apartment, the quiet kind of quiet that doesn't feel empty. The kind that feels earned. My phone was still on the nightstand. No missed calls. No long messages waiting to be decoded. Just a short text from my aunt. "Proud of you. Call later." That was it. I got up, made coffee, and stood by the window while the city slowly woke up. Nothing about my life looked dramatically different from the outside. Same job. Same routines. Same responsibilities. But inside, everything had shifted. Without the monthly transfers, my bank account stopped feeling like a countdown clock. I wasn't rich. I wasn't suddenly free of stress. But I could breathe. I could plan. I could say yes to small things without panic and no to others without guilt. That mattered more than I'd expected. The fallout from that dinner didn't arrive all at once. It came quietly. My mother didn't call anymore, not at first. Then a few messages came through, swinging between apology and accusation. I didn't answer. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I'd learned something important. Responding had always been part of the pattern. My father changed, too. Not dramatically. Just enough. He stopped smoothing things over. Stopped assuming someone else would step in. He started asking questions he hadn't asked before. I should have seen it, he told me once. I'm sorry I didn't. That apology mattered. Not because it fixed the past, but because it acknowledged it. As for my mother, I heard things through other people. She downsized, complained, told her version of the story, then adjusted it when it didn't land the way it used to. I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. The truth didn't require my supervision anymore. What surprised me most wasn't how much lighter I felt, but how normal that lightness became. I stopped bracing for conflict. Stopped rehearsing explanations in my head. Stopped measuring my worth by how useful I was to someone else. One afternoon, standing in line at a grocery store, it hit me. I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. I wasn't proving anything. I was just living. People like to imagine moments like mine ending in applause, in dramatic revenge, in public collapse. But that's not what freedom looks like most of the time. Freedom looks like quiet mornings, clear boundaries, and the absence of dread where there used to be constant noise. I didn't burn her world down. I just stopped holding it up. And that turned out to be enough. So if you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in it, if someone in your life only values you when you're useful, only respects you when you're paying the cost, ask yourself this. Would you rather win the argument or finally get your life back? Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't proving your worth. It's walking away and letting the truth stand on its own.